the picture identifies it, of archaeological Native Americans and 20th century people. It gives you the distribution of different limbs and body parts, and what would you guess offhand has changed in cultural, social, technological behavior that accounts for that chart difference. Do you remember looking at that a little bit, by any chance? Well, if you have it real quick, you can open your text to page 28.
Okay.
If it's handy, I need to move on, but... Anyone?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Did you write it?
Well, think of it. This is where, of course, like we've been trying to home in on for this entire course through everything, there is no separation of the biological organism from its broader context. Right? And what that chart shows you, archaeologically Native Americans had a lot less lower femur tibia breakage than they had clavicles, radius, all in the arms, falling because of their way of life. And as the paper, I think, correctly points out, any of you, especially Sierra as a nurse, know that high-speed transportation and everything that moves fast has a different kind of percussion and concussion, and can break legs, lower legs very easily. It's still the most common bone to get broken through many of these things are clavicles. And just falling and catching yourself like this.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was just a point.
Okay.
What is the pubic symphysis? I mean, we talked about that a little bit. Particularly useful in aging, trying to date the age of skeleton. The place which joins the two pelvis and a ligament kind of thing. That's page 16, you can just read. I'm just trying to say, don't forget this. But look at that textbook. You can get stuff out of there. I can't talk about every little detail, although I tend to, I suppose you say. And then question number one is that why is it so hard to sex children from skeletons? In other words, determine sex.
Well, because they haven't developed yet, so the distinguishing characteristics are not evident in the skeleton yet.
And particularly just what that saying.
Yeah.
And particularly the sex characteristics,
Yes,
which
yeah.
is what I know you implied it.
Yeah.
Which is what we use.
Right.
The pelvis hasn't changed those forms and anything to that extent, so it becomes ironic.
Yeah. And also the face.
Face hasn't, the hormones haven't kicked in to create those kinds of things that we talked about. Now, again, because I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to talk about your little 10-pointer.
Okay.
Because it relates to teeth before we move and finish teeth and move on to these other PowerPoints. Iron and shortages and red blood cell production. Showing up in the skull bones, particularly. And then cranial modification, which I think is kind of fun, showing how different people in the world have different ideas of beauty. And then trauma as far as we can get. But let me just finish on sexing. But we now have, quite successfully out of bone DNA, isolated the Y chromosome. So, there you go. We beg as bioarchaeologists, very few of us do this. I have a friend that's got a world-class lab. He's the head of the department in the University of Utah. But beyond him, there aren't a lot of bioarchaeologists that are also expert at doing the DNA in the labs and all of that sort of thing. So we beg, borrow, and steal from all the other hard sciences in many cases. And that includes dating systems originally. Okay. We were talking about teeth the other day.
Yeah.
Benefit of teeth. Give us what you found.
I found this article and just went to the New York Times website and put in archaeology, and I found this article from literally less than a month ago, 2 weeks ago. The title is DNA Turning Human Story into Tell-All. It's so interesting because if we've taken archaeology or anthropology, we have these divisions of Neanderthals lived in this number of years and the other group this year, so forth. And this article talks about how they found this little tooth and a little bit of a thumb in Siberia, and it was embedded way into the terrain, and they figure about 250 million years old, and they were able to extract some of the DNA, and now it's completely shifting the world of anthropology, because they're talking about possibly the coupling of not only Neanderthals, but another group called the Denisovans, who lived in Asia. So, and it wasn't romantic. I know we're coming up with Valentine's Day. So, but the point is that different groups maybe came together, and we carry. And by the way, we carry some of that DNA, and it differs. For example, in Europeans, the percentage is about 1% of Neanderthal, but in people in Oceania, including some of the native Australians, it's up as high as 5%. But there's there's always good counterpoint. There's these two professors in geneticists in Switzerland who say, no, wait a second, the breeding between the Neanderthals and modern humans is probably rare. Otherwise, modern humans would have more Neanderthal DNA. So you can say...
Exploration.
Yeah, the exploring, so maybe 10 or 15 years from now, with the new processes of detecting the DNA, they may be able to definitively say, yeah, we had more Neanderthal DNA or less or whatever. But it opens up a whole different area.
Exactly.
It's exciting.
Point well made, and an awful lot of stuff from the pulp of teeth, which compared to bone, survival, maybe there's plenty of teeth. Yeah. And along with, interestingly enough, when you do H and DNA studies out of bone, you often get very little short sequences at best of that owner that once was alive, but your odds of getting a bacterium sequence is much greater, and usually a longer thing, which then you do PCR, somebody in biology, polymer chain reaction, ways to essentially grow or accelerate those little short things to be able to do stuff to it. But and that's because those damn bacteria have different ways to protect themselves, and they don't degrade as fast and as easy. So you often get more of that, of the disease, than you do really of the individual per se. But often you get both. I have to move real quick, folks, because
the bacteria also tends to evolve a lot too, so it's a little bit hard to...
If you let your eyes adjust, and you've had enough vitamin A and all that sort of stuff, so that your night vision rods and cones can balance themselves, you might be able to scribble a few things here if you want. Again, this isn't 100% as successful to me, but this projector, but I'd like to move on with it. This is where we left off, essentially, and this is dental disease in ancient Britain. What we're going to look at is tooth crowding, softer food. We talked about that. There's an overbite, a buccal overbite where you get under your teeth and the bite is glaring. I'm moving fairly fast here. I wouldn't really worry about this, but I'll just show you some of these. Here's this. This is periodontal decay. The lower jawbone, the mantle is decaying. It has been infected. It has these remnants, and the pulp is starting to be exposed, as we call collars around there. This one has these. Look at these wear patterns on those front incisors. There's an overbite in terms of wear. That's just shaving those down at an angle from the maxilla wearing on the lower. This is a caries rate by group, and in the United States, archaeological group. And this is about the time that corn becomes increasingly dominant in the diet, and population expands, and some of those things I talked about the other day. So you have a general feeling for that thing we talked about very early about the shift from agriculture, into agriculture. In many cases in the world, this resulted in, there's a very good writer, Jared Diamond, who has written a lot of excellent reading books for the public, but also heavy science stuff that he's done. He has an article I used, I don't know, about 5 years ago already. He's written it, if not already, and he said, agriculture, the dumbest and worst mistake in human history. And he talks and itemizes some of these things that we've talked about in it, if you're ever interested in following him. But particularly corn and population based on corn, because it provides a lot of calories. It grows in all kinds of places. We know that it went back to the old world where it became sanctioned like a religion among Africans as if they owned it, and it never started there. It started out in Mesoamerica.
By him saying though that, I mean, it was done, at the same time, don't you have to say that it was inevitable?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
You take what you have to survive.
This just reviews some things. We haven't been here, have we, on this slide the other day?
No.
This is by hunters and Arctic people. Look, Mom, no cavities. But I've talked about that enough. In terms of growth, I didn't mention, but lots of skeletal studies in Greece have revealed that as they shifted and depended more and more on agriculture, that's our big shift in human history, the population on average lost between 3 and 4 inches in height. That goes back to that stunting and lack of nutritional kinds of things. Interesting carry relationship to sugar import. Many European countries showed a dip in the carries rate due to restrictions in sugar availability during World War II. Very interesting. Archaeologically, too, in Britain, small amounts of sugar began to be imported as early as the 10th century, but significant amounts arrived only during the 17th with the expansion of England and colonial policy, establishing sugarcane plantations, and that brought the price down after a while, made it more available to everyone in the society, and guess what? You could predict. Study of dental caries shows the increase that parallels the sugar import. This is a crown cusp ware. We know that certain kinds of food, and often prepared on, say, manos metates in the New World, you get particles of the mineral breaking off, and that mono is moving over to metate, and you kind of end up chewing that. So sometimes there's some pretty abrasive wear patterns that you can also understand. And again, this is just to kind of get an idea. People have forever tried to deal with this. This is a rosary bead in a big cavity carry here, put in, and obviously during the medieval times where it was blessed with, all the proper prayers and the hope that it would protect them. More people just end up pulling their teeth off. This is a diagrammatic explanation of this comes out of a codex among Mayans and Aztecs. This is up in Alaska in the 1930s among the Inupiat. They wore decorative things called labrettes, which are cheek labrettes, and some of them had tattoos, and I knew one of the oldest. She was about 90 when I met her. She was still face was all tattooed and some of her arms, and she had a lip labrette, it's called, a piercing here, and put into that cut, not too unlike modern groups, huh?
And what are they made out of? Is it metal or bone?
Often bone, from different kinds of animals, but sometimes from local minerals, local stones.
But it's a strictly decorated.
Oh yeah.
Decoration.
What I want to say, this is a close-up, which I don't know where I took